Let's talk a little bit about what's not Chö. There are so many confusion, even in our mind. We have been practicing Chö to some extent. Some of you are longer, some of might be new. In the West, especially, lots of confusions. It's good to be clear about what we are doing in the context of Chö Mahamudra. Let's see. You tell us what's not the Chö. Common misunderstanding or interpretation of the Chö in the Western world, or not only Western, even in Machik's time, there are lots of confusion. And then Machik scored. Some Chopak, quote-unquote Chopak, visited Machik. Then Machik scored them. That's not the Chö. That's not what I'm teaching. So same things happen in the West as well. Chö is very unique and esoteric kind of thing. So you tell me a few, then we get to start from there. What the Chö is not, or what the Chö is.
I've heard in Tibet, either Machik's time or any time, it's often sometimes viewed more by some as like a shamanic practice to like get the evil spirits out of here or something like that, or like to create better fortune. I think that ties into, it could be looked at that in the West, like the healing thing without emptiness. If you're like trying to fix something with Chö, that's like the internal version of just using it as an outward shamanic practice that doesn't actually get to the root and the emptiness aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. We started talk about that and the nature of healing. And also you said exorcism, is that called? Yeah, Chö is not the exorcism or spirit work. That's not what Chö is doing. So first Western encounter of Chö, do you know that the lady Blavatsky, the 50s, she went to Tibet and heard this Chöpers like screaming and this and that, then very mystified Chö. Then, this is spirit work. See, he's doing an exorcism or something like that. Because so esoteric, right? Never heard those things. Or maybe connected to the shamanistic thing. But anyway, that's one thing.
And the point follows very much, I think. I was going to say, it's not the reification of demons and devils, like externalizing them on like I think the process can be thought of. People like Madame Blavatsky or Westerners in general, I think it's because they have a very particular understanding of what animism looks like in those cultures, and then they apply that filter to what they're seeing every single time. And I think that's probably where the biggest mistake is happening, is like it's a misinterpretation of how those cultures relate to an animistic worldview. Of course, if you take a Western mindset that thinks of animism as the simple superstitious belief that objects have psyche or objects have spirit, then of course Chö starts to look like exorcism to you, and it's a very naive sort of view. I think Bon scholars have made the same point about the misunderstanding of Bon within Western traditions.
Yeah, demons. Machik said demons are not external, although appears in external, in the sense as real as everything, The demon is the same, coming from our own mind, ultimately. Yeah, that's one thing. Machik defined the demon as anything that obstructed liberation, freedom. That's the definition. So that includes traumas, illness, attachment, and even this spiritual pride. I'm a practitioner, this kind of feeling. Yeah, the I, right? Yeah, threatening this solid I, unified I. So through Chö, we gently or decisively loosening that fixation or belief in a solid, threatened I. Anything else? How about therapy? Psychological therapy. Chö is the psychological therapy, ultimate therapy, Is that the Chö?
Yeah, there's definitely this view in the West. People can take on this view of like Chö being something exotic, and because it's exotic, they want it. So there's that. It's not fantasy, and it's also not to be taken literally, just in terms of misunderstandings.
Yeah, so that's also a good point, literal thing. And also this tendency of psychologizing the Chö. Chö has many multi-dimensioned. You all started to notice multi-dimensioned. Chö is performed only in the context of the Dharma, refugee, bodhicitta, and compassion, ethics, everything. Chö is not about cutting, chopping, violent acts. Opposite in a sense. Reverse.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because that's the way that I practice for over 30 years of this is unskillful, so don't do it. This is skillful, so do this. This is good, so this is bad. So if Cho practice is approached in that way, it's like, oh, well, this is bad. Let me cut it off. It's like, no. That's actually that paradigm of good, gimme, and bad, get away. That paradigm is actually what traps us in suffering.
Yeah, good point. Something like that. So I asked my personal assistant about this. I described my ideas. Then they gave me the visual pictures, how my personal assistant interpreted. I thought interested how he viewed. I asked about what's not and the misunderstanding of Tibetan Buddhist, he said, most radical practice, Chö. It looks like a haunting, but at its heart, Chö is the ultimate act of aggressive love. I don't know about that one. But anyway, paradox of the charnel ground. So this is the picture. Often we see like this kind of pictures, sky barrier. In Tibet, there's a place where the corpse lay down, and then vulture come and eat the corpse. Chö is influenced by that sort of custom or Tibetan culturally colored idea as well. So this is a little bit like one of those death metal T-shirts or something. We can see those skulls. But anyway, to the outsider, it appears to be a summoning of darkness. Right outside, blowing the siphon trumpet, using the skin coated the drums and this and that. To the practitioners, Chopa, it is a confrontation with the ultimate fear, the dissolution of the I. Chö literally means cutting. It utilizes the imagery of death and demons, not to summon evil, but to dismantle the root of suffering, grasping, fear, and ego fixation. We do not go to the graveyard to frighten ourselves. We go to see there is no one there to be frightened. Anyway, if you have any observation about my personal assistant, he's not perfect. Let's discuss that. The reason I've done this is how commonly, in the West, right? This is the Western world, how people interpret it, and then how in general people view what's the misunderstanding or confusion about the thing. So I'm not presenting this as this is correct or right. I was thinking just to talk about it, 1, 2, 3 as usual, bullet point, because I already have this idea about what a common misunderstanding. And then I was trying to present to you. But then I thought maybe it's nice to have a little bit of go through this. Then as we go through this, we can discuss. That's my idea.
The previous image of the charnel ground, again, it gets back to this tendency of Westerners to take things literally.
Somebody made this point about the Indian cult, and this is, if you look at Western iconography about death, it is final, it is dead, it is like stale, it's skulls, and it's just it's final, it's terminance, it's done. There is, because obviously the West doesn't have rebirth as a concept, right? So there's finality that is very strongly associated to this imagery in our zeitgeist. Whereas, like Dhanadasa was saying, in India, there's this. It's almost like, no, this is the natural progression. This is the next step. This is just a step in the evolution. I think there is a lot to be said about that. I think that in itself could be like a whole book. But yeah,
as I said in the context, so this was practiced in actually advanced. According to my book, Chö is the golden ornament of the golden roof. That is true. Machik Labdrön, the revolutionary insight, said, do not blame external demons, look to grasping. So fundamental root of the demons, you can say. In Chöd, demon is not a monster with fangs. A demon is anything that obstructs revelation. This includes fear, trauma, illness, attachment, and even spiritual pride. But the demon appears as like a monster with fear, as if appearance. It's a fearful appear. And especially, I don't know, the psychotherapeutic setting, personalize and externalize that sort of thing. Then we have a conversation, what you want, something like that. Yeah, lot to say about this as well. If you struggle against it, it will become a demon. If you realize its emptiness, it will become a teacher. Something like that. See, it's difficult to have let the heart to hold a Chöd Damaru. This is the Indian Damaru. Actually, Chöd Damaru came from the India. This is called chantel.
The thing that you see in therapy every single time, like you work with clients, and what you notice is it's a part that has been repressed into the shadow. That's their demon, and it comes out like a very angry wolf man or something. I think I said this before, but over time, as they fear it initially, and that's the problem. It's like that they meet it with fear, they meet it, and what you try to teach them to do is meet it with compassion, curiosity, calmness. And if you can get them to that stage, the part transforms. And they start to see a child. They start to see something softer. They start to see. So it's complete. It's exactly this insight at the end there. Because if you struggle against it, it's a demon. But if you actually realize that it's not, like if you meet it with kindness or compassion, or realize its emptiness. I mean, we don't, like in therapy, we don't tend to take it that far. But one of the things that I continuously do is the way you see it right now is a projection. It is your projection, and then they start to unravel it, and they start to realize that it's so much softer than what they're seeing it as. And that's how they actually get to heal with it.
Good. Then we already talked about Chöd is not the exorcism. We do not fight the darkness, we feed it. Look at this fight. Exorcism attempt to banish, bind, or dominate the spirit to protect the self. Then opposite, right? Chöd invite the demon in and offer the self. Give away to the self to them. Radical generosity cut the hostility at the root. When the grasping mind is fed exactly what it wants, it dissolves. Because it's satisfied, it dissolved. Just let me know if you want to kind of decide some part of it to discuss.
I wanted to comment on what Abraham was speaking about. I'm not saying this is what you said. It's more like what arose for me as you were speaking. Is just what's the difference between self-help and Chöd practice. This slide, you can fight it. It creates demons and keeps them alive. You can feed them, so you can dissolve the demons and whatnot. And within the context of self-help, it's like, well, how can I live my life better? How can I be more comfortable? How can I get what I want? So when you bring in emptiness, you simply cannot bring in emptiness without bodhicitta, right? The two go hand in hand. That's what's missing from, self-help, if you will. So I just wanted to just throw that in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will come, I think, more like Chöd is not just a therapy kind of context. Of course, conventional level, relative level, helping people, if whatever helps them, that's a compassionate act. The crucial distinction, shamanistic healing and Chöd practice, we already talked about that. Look at this representation, bell and Damaru holding together. Grounding in Prajnaparamita, so that Mahamudra, right, ultimate view. Spirit are ultimately mind-created appearances as anything else. Yeah, arising from grasping. Then goal is a liberation from self-clinging versus shamanistic healing. Goal is a restore power and balance to the self within a spirit-filled world. Then how to do that? Mechanism is realizing emptiness, shamanistic healing, negotiation, and restoration. Key takeaway, shamanism negotiates with the reality of spirit world. Chöd uses spirit imagery to deconstruct reality of the observer. So this is the method. So this is the view. We just talked about the difference in view. Then now difference in method, because it's similar, no? Both use the damaru and, sound, chanting, and visualization, all these things. And Siberia, and also Mongolia, very popular shamanistic shaman. There are lots of shamans, I'm sure nowadays, too, but historically speaking. So Chöd was said, influenced by that Siberian, Mongolian shamanism, this usage of the drum and so forth. And also going through the death process, dissolution and death process, that's what they do, shamans, I think. Chopper's method is renunciate and offering. Then shaman's method, mediator and protector. Then technique, shamans uses the allies, guardians, and the seals, maintains boundary. They create the boundary to remain intact while intervening. Then Chopper's technique is totally vulnerable, no protection circle. I often talk about when we do the Chöd healing, we let go of this protection code. The Tibetans wearing protector code, or the omamori in Japanese. You need to take that because we want to feed. You don't want to protect, So no protection circle. The body is offered as food.
The one thing I find really fascinating is this notion of an ontological reality. Okay, so when you go on a shamanic journey and you journey down into a cave and you meet your guardian, right? Is that real? To speak from a Buddhist perspective in terms of emptiness, well, when we engage in the imagery of Chöd or any of the sadhana practices, those sacred images, they're doorways into non-dual reality, but there's no ontological truth to, the imagery that we're creating in our minds, right? It's the imagery. So I always like to, it's the distinction between, is it true or is it helpful? So when you bring in emptiness in Buddhism, actually, is it true? Is it real? That's not the right question, right? Is it helpful? Does it lead towards liberation? Whereas I've noticed that people engaged in shamanism relate to allies, guardian shields, protector deities as ontologically real, like outside of oneself.
Yeah, view is completely different.
It's the same error that I think people make when they're starting to get into Vajrayāna, where they start to take the Dharma protectors and the deities and the yidams, and they reify them. I studied a little bit of Toltaic shamanism, sort of, the Don Juan, the popular lineage that came to the West in San Francisco at the time, the hippie era. But I was really curious about what they were like. But even then, they talk about the dream of the world, and they talk about I was really curious always about whether it's a dual nature that they're talking about or not. And they talk about the tonal and the nagual, right? And it's and for me, this is, again, obviously I'm looking at it sometimes through a Buddhist lens, and I try not to, but they talk about the structured, the named, what you can see. They are gateways into the undifferentiated behind it. And so they talk a lot about it in these two layers, and get to a very deeply non-dual understanding, actually, in terms of how they actually relate. Like if talk some of the more engaged shamans and even druids in druidic circles here in the UK, and they will tell you the guardian is no more real than any of this, and that's like a line straight out of Saraha. They will push this narrative very strongly, actually. And so yeah, it's obviously very nuanced. Like every tradition, they have wisdom keepers, I think, that are able to hold a non-dual threads even within shamanism. It's just that shamanism holds animism at a very different level to what our convention of animism is. But I think it's so beautiful because I think the slide does actually really capture the very exoteric and the esoteric nature of both. And I think that's the mistake that we make with Chöd. I think, to really underline, I think people take a very exoteric approach to what is something that is so deeply esoteric and without a foundation of emptiness falls down. And so does shamanism. If you remove the Nagual from shamanism, this undifferentiated, unified whole, like you cannot operate in the dream of the world because you still think that you're too real. So they always talk about waking up within the dream.
Yeah, non-dual, there are lots of philosophy and teaching and tradition talks about the non-dual. Non-dual doesn't mean emptiness in a Buddhist sense at all. Even subject, object, non-dual equal emptiness. It's not going to work that way. There are lots of criticism. If we carefully read the Ramatsongkhapa, that's one of the Ramatsongkhapa's criticism to his contemporary philosophy at that time. Anyway, so self-emptiness and surrender versus strengthening and restoring. Chöd looks shamanic because it uses drums and wild places, so wilderness retreat done. But the Machik's lineage is not the spirit medicine. It is wisdom enacted through the body. I don't know about this expression. And here comes the therapy component. Chö is not just therapy. Distortion, reducing demons to merely inner parts or archetypes, so that's the archetype, Jung and archetypes, to fix the broken self. And that's psychologizing, this side. Then the traps is if you practice Chö just to feel better, like Chö healing we did, people come to feel better, you are strengthening the ego, maybe temporary relief there, but then nothing much changed once that honeymoon stage is over. The very demon you are trying to cut. Then reality, the psychological relief is a byproduct. It doesn't say doesn't have. A byproduct, not the goal. Cutting, grasping. Machik's warning, she warned actually. If you do not cut grasping, the root of suffering, even virtuous practices become demon. For example, Chö or I'm doing this virtuous thing, and the pride, spiritual pride we generate, so that's become demons. Even just ordinary people, non-spiritual people, may not necessarily engage in Chö practice like playing drama, but I talked about these different dimensions of the Chö. For example, simple Tonren practice, this shifting the attitude. So that's the Chö actually, that's the inner Chö, right? I mean the Tonren. Chö is a radical Tonren, fierce Tonren I called. Yeah, we can teach or share that sort of Buddhist wisdom, simple practice. Although it's not simple, but the powerful, simplified version of Chö called Tonren. That is very powerful, shifting the perspective. Then see, eventually that disappears, the self, strong clinging on to self through that process. Breathing, using a breathing, so it affects on the subtle body and everything. Tonren is such a powerful practice. Tonren is the essence of Chö. Yeah, if we, all these human beings here, how many billions living here, if they all practice Tonren, what do the world be like? If not the monster, then what? The 4 demons. I asked the 4 demons, the Machik's 4 demons. Buddha already laid his version of 4 demons. Then Machik, my personal assistant, create this visual aid. So the tangible demon is fixation on a sensory object. So sometimes it's called external demons or outer demons. So wealth, body, external enemies, or the persons whom you have a trouble with, something involved. Then second is called the internal demon. You cannot see, but internal, inner. This is psychological demon. Internal state, anxiety, neurosis, through loops and traumas included here. The third one, watch out, that's especially the demon of exaltation. That's Sera's translations, exaltation. It's about Deva Putra in Buddha's categorization. That's the third one, like arrogance, spiritual pride. attached to the high or visions. Oh, I saw this. Manjushri appeared in my dream. I want to have a same dream, a better one. That sort of thing. That's one spiritual trap, spiritual practitioner's trap. So the last one is the ultimate one. I don't know about this one, this picture, but a demon of arrogance, the root. Yeah, this translation is said as arrogance. This is the final, like us grasping, complete ignorance, sometimes translated, the root, the fundamental belief that impermanent, separate I exist. Then method, this picture is not right, but radical generosity, visualization, practitioner visualize their own body transform into vast healing nectar. We all know that. This nectar is offered to all beings, especially those who wish us harm. So we invited the so-called karmic debtor, harm doers, we invited. Then alchemy, somebody are talking of don't take it literal or something. So we transform in visualization. We are not really chopping body and this. We imagine using that skillful means of Tantra, Vajrayāna. We transform eating or consuming into feeding. So this is the tonren, right? We usually want to take. Then now what's happened? We have been doing ages, just taking from the earth, taking from this, taking from, every nature, take. We didn't return, give them, offer. I mean, in the ancient time, there are a lot of ritual to offer to the nature and the American Indian ritual and this and that. But now that ritual is lost. And there's no appreciation. For example, we take it for granted. Then look at the now world, not to mention the global warming and the wars and everything is these patterns, this reversed patterns coming from. So we need to transform that instead of taking, feeding, giving. When the demons of self-clinging is fully satisfied, the duality between feeder and fed collapse. Now, in terms of healing, but not the cure. I was talking about. What Chöd is doing is a revelation, ultimate revelation. Chöd does not promise to cure cancer. If we approach Chöd to cure cancer, Chöd has been used in a hospital setting or something. I think Arizona, I know the one guy who does the Chöd. He used the Chöd to heal the cancer or some terminal illness or something like that. So there's a modern application of the Chöd. Based on the compassion and generosity. But what Chöd is doing is not really aiming at her. That's a byproduct again. And also not promising. If you do Chöd, everything is fine. It doesn't work that way, or cure. But it said cure the fear of cancer. That affects the actually healing of the cancer. You know what I mean? Everybody has a fear. Fear of death, fear of this and that. But the fear of fear, that's the causing, make that sort of things worse. For example, illness of cancer or terminal illness. Trauma and the body, the nervous system learns that the fear can be faced rather than suppressed. Resistance is cut and the flow is restored. But if too much fear, then even we cannot get started, right? If the tree, if we want to cut the root of the tree, if branch is so widespread, we may need to trim because the only advanced chopper, what you call the person who cut the tree, anyway, cut the root. But for us, we need to go slowly as well. There are two methods, we need to combine the skillful means and also ultimate view. Then outcome of healing comes not from being fixed, but from belonging to the whole. Belonging to the whole. Little bit New Age-ish. Anyway, here, practitioners find a sense of inner freedom even when outer conditions do not change. But the outer phenomena, you started to notice outer phenomena is depending on our minds. This borderline between outer and inner started to get fuzzy. So then become more responsible. So that's the benefit of started to realize the non-duality, if you use that term, or the emptiness. If we don't have that, just non-duality, realizing subject, object, or whatever, if that is not expression of compassion, the responsibility, self-responsibility, then it's not benefiting. Doesn't make sense.
I don't care for that last sentence on the slide. The practitioner finds a sense of inner freedom even when outer conditions do not change. The way I would say that, or what comes to mind is, the practitioner finds a sense of inner freedom independent of one's outer conditions.
To be kind to yourself, become kind, peaceful, and so that ripples effect to the world. So we can change the world in that way because we are mutually connected, interdependent. We cannot say this is the outer world, this is the inner world. So all are related. We created this problem. We are responsible. So that means we can change it. No outside somewhere or the God who punishes us or some kind of responsible figure out there. Then Chöd of Mahamudra. Anyway, Mahamudra is a view. Maha is a great. Mudra is the seal, great seal. The realization that the mind is empty, luminous, and aware. Then how to do it? Method part, is a Chöd. The technique used to provoke the ego, so this realization can occur. Then the union, Chöd is skillful means, right, based on Mahamudra. So union of Chöd and Mahamudra. So that makes powerful. Just the Chöd or that ritual aspect, shamanistic looking, without knowing the view, Mahamudra. That's not the Chöd of Mahamudra here, what we are trying to do in our tradition. We practice Chöd to realize Mahamudra, to see the demons, the offering, the feeders are all empty. So we rested in that for a short while, right? Without this view, the ritual is just theater, performance. Chöd is a very good performance. Tibetan monks, visit to the Western United States and Canada, do this Chöd tour or something. They put the heart and the migdal. Migdal is this kind of eye covering, and then the Chöd. So that's a performance, right? Then audience looking at that.
When you bring in secrecy, then you're not basing, like you're not relying on external approval, for your sense of worth, so like secrecy forces that, because you're only doing this, it really clarified something for me.
Just still this the third demons internally, yourself discussion about the third demons still remained there, but then focus is no longer outside and inside. So those monks in the monasteries, I really feel sorry for them as well. They need to raise the fund for the monastery and building the temple, fixing this and that. So they use those. They know this is not true. I'm sure they know, but they do, and the visiting and kind of showing off the performance, their unique performance, and the raise fund and so forth. Then modern pitfall and safety. The danger of distortion, commodifying as a weekend workshop. I'm gonna be blamed. Commodifying as a weekend workshop or edgy aesthetic strips it of a safety framework. The safety framework, refuge and bodhicitta, the context, right? Although I try my best to always place the Chöd in the context, even weekends thing. But here, what's commonly happening is just extract the Chöd itself and then Chöd workshop. Then people come from all over the places and, interesting, I want to learn Chöd and heal this and heal that, using Chöd as a kind of, tool. over-psychologizing tendency in the West, because only thinking about this. I want to be fixed. I want to heal. My anxiety will go. That's what I want. Yeah, other important component, completely missed. But doesn't mean that her method or the Jung psychotherapeutic method doesn't have a meaning. Actually, it has a lot of meaning in the modern context, right? Lots of people suffering. Again, this metaphor of the tree, Chöd is cutting the root. You have, as long as you don't cut root, then again, all the branches grow. But some people really trim some part of the tree and this level, so that we started to see the real root of confusion, problem, suffering. That's also maybe one doorway into the real Chöd in a real sense. Use the skillful means in that sense.
Isn't it possible? I mean, for me, it's hard to imagine. It doesn't feel good to imagine my body, dead, and then, very explicit imagery, peeling off the skin and my intestines. Isn't it? Do you think it's possible it's that drives them away, that's something they don't want to imagine?
No, actually, they won't, I think. I don't know what they are in mind. Each person has a different karmic inclination and different interest. But Chöd became popular because of that sort of kind of esoteric, grotesque ritual, kind of a flowery, juicy practice among all these strict, disciplined things. Doesn't bring this emotional feeling. But Chöd is something, everything that I'm guessing. I'm worse than AI. I'm just guessing. As long as we don't place the Chöd in the context of the long journey of awakening, because Chöd is not a quick fix, right? And why bother to learn all the apparently complicated visualization, chanting melodies, and this and that? That discourages some Western practitioners who initially came with the enthusiasm of Chöd. But just in this context, I'm talking about commodifying Chöd, or even next one, romanticizing darkness. Channel ground imagery is not the liberating, it is the discipline in impermanence. So some people look at this channel ground or, sky barriers, those kind of thing, then attract, romanticizing darkness. Lineage matters. This is the oral tradition, so this part is the missing, completely missing, coming from the awakened mind, awakened teachers, Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, Machik Labdrön, then all the great ear whisper lineage masters, then my teachers, then now to you guys. So teacher to student, to ensure the cutting happens to ego, not the psyche. These levels of the cutting, right? Levels of psyche, levels of emotion, levels of this ultimate ego, the ego, this terminology, that Western terminology. So lots to talk about. But anyway, here warning, practicing without the view of emptiness can amplify fear rather than dissolving it. My understanding all levels of the fixation, right? And the ultimate level here expressing the ego, the sense of self-fixation or the self-grasping, which itself has a problem in the translation. But this ultimate misunderstanding and the fixation or ignorance, misunderstanding of reality, the self and all the phenomena. And the psyche is the one, 2 steps outer level. So you can say the psyche, psychological level. And that's what psychotherapy is dealing with. They are not really targeting the ultimate misunderstanding of ignorance. Eventually people go there, but we are talking about the branch called the psyche. Basically, this ego and the psyche, this is a Western terminology, right? But maybe we can see that again, the metaphor of the tree. The root of the tree is the ego, and all the branches, the psyches. Sometimes pruning creates more things, right? So instead of doing that, then cut the ego. That's coming from the oral traditions and passed down from teacher to students. So therefore, lineage master. So those kind of subtleties need to be taught by a teacher, these lineage teachers. And otherwise, just bring it into the context, Western context. It's sometimes opposite effect. Then one line, clear line. Shamanic healing works to fix or restore the self within the spirit-filled world. Chöd cut the belief in the self altogether and call that liberation, healing. Okay, this is the last slide. The fruit of the practice, Chöd practice. When the feather of the ego is cut, what remains is not nothingness, but open, compassionate awareness. We are not talking about Ramachandrak's view or other view or something like that, but more general term, like emptiness, realization of emptiness, realization of Mahamudra. The expression of that is a compassion. If not, something wrong. It's not authentic realization. Not authentic fruit. Fruits of the practice is compassion. Complete non-duality, the self and other. There's no difference. Other being, that the enemy is as important as me. Same, no question about that. So open, compassionate awareness. To practice Chöd is to live without armor. May all beings realize the empty nature of fear.